Imagine this. You're standing on a deserted island in 1590. 3 years ago, over 100 people lived here. Men, women, and children. They built homes, planted crops, and started a new life. But now, everyone is gone. The houses are empty. The food is rotting. There's no sign of struggle, no bodies, no graves. Just one word carved into a tree. Croatoan. What happened here? Where did they go? This is the story of Roanoke Colony, and it's about to blow your mind. Welcome to America's greatest mystery. Let's go back in time, way back. We're talking about the year 1587. America wasn't called America yet. There were no states, no cities, no McDonald's on every corner. Just thick forests, wild animals, and Native American tribes living their lives. England, across the ocean, was a powerful country. Their Queen Elizabeth I wanted more power and more land. She looked at the New World and thought, I want a piece of that. So England decided to start a colony. A colony is like a new town in a foreign land where people from your country go to live. Think of it like starting a new Minecraft world, but in real life, and way more dangerous. They chose a place called Roanoke Island. It's located in what we now call North Carolina. Back then, it was just a mysterious, unexplored wilderness. The plan seemed simple: send over a group of English settlers. They would build homes, grow food, and claim the land for England. These weren't soldiers or explorers. These were regular families, moms, dads, and kids. They packed up their entire lives and sailed across a massive, scary ocean to start fresh in a land they'd never seen before. Can you imagine doing that? It's leaving everything you know behind for a place you only heard about in stories. The leader of this whole operation was a man named John White. He was an artist and a governor. He wasn't some tough military guy. He was just a man trying to do his best for his people. John White had a daughter named Eleanor, and she was pregnant. She would soon give birth to a baby girl named Virginia Dare. Virginia Dare became the first English child ever born in the New World. That's a pretty big deal. These settlers arrived on Roanoke Island in July 1587. They were excited, nervous, and probably a little scared. They started building houses and planting crops. Everything seemed to be going okay at first. But there was a huge problem. They didn't bring enough supplies. Food was running low. They needed help from England, and they needed it fast. So John White made a tough decision. He would sail back to England to get more supplies and bring them back. He promised the colonists he'd return as soon as possible. He left behind over 100 people, including his daughter and his newborn granddaughter. He hugged them goodbye and sailed away. He had no idea that he would never see them again. This is where the mystery begins. And trust me, it only gets stranger from here. John White sailed away from Roanoke Island with a heavy heart. He didn't want to leave his family and friends behind, but he had no choice. They were running out of food, tools, and basic supplies. Without help from England, the colony would fail. He promised everyone he'd be back in a few months. Just a quick trip across the ocean, grab the supplies, and come right back. Easy, right? Wrong. Very wrong. When John White arrived in England, everything went sideways. He got there in November 1587, and he immediately started gathering supplies for the colony. He packed food, weapons, clothes, medicine, and everything else the settlers needed. He was ready to go back. But then disaster struck. England was about to go to war with Spain. This wasn't some small fight. This was a massive conflict. Spain had a huge fleet of warships called the Spanish Armada, and they were heading straight for England. Queen Elizabeth ordered every single ship to stay in England. No exceptions. Every boat, big or small, was needed to defend the country. John White begged and pleaded. He explained that over 100 people were waiting for him in Roanoke. They were starving. They needed help. But the Queen didn't care. War was more important. So John White was stuck. Couldn't leave. He couldn't go back to his family. All he could do was wait and worry. The war with Spain lasted for months. England finally defeated the Spanish Armada in 1588. But even after the war ended, John White still couldn't leave. Why? Because all the ships were damaged. They needed repairs. Plus, England was broke from the war. There was no money to fund a rescue mission to some distant colony. John White felt helpless. He tried everything. He wrote letters. He asked for help. Even tried to sneak onto ships heading to the New World. Nothing worked. Finally, after 3 long years, John White got his chance. In 1590, he joined a privateering expedition. Privateers were basically legal pirates who attacked enemy ships for profit. It wasn't the rescue mission he wanted, but it was his only option. He boarded the ship and set sail for Roanoke. His heart was pounding. He hadn't seen his daughter or granddaughter in 3 years. He wondered if they were okay. Did they have enough food? Were they safe? Did they think he abandoned them? The journey took months. When the coast of North Carolina finally appeared on the horizon, John White felt a mix of relief and terror. He was almost home, but deep down, something felt wrong. Very wrong. August 18th, 1590, John White's ship finally reached the coast of Roanoke Island. It had been 3 years, 1 month, and a few days since he left. 3 years of constant worry. 3 years of guilt. 3 years of wondering if his family was still alive. Now he was finally back, and he was about to get his answers. But nothing could prepare him for what he was about to find. The ship anchored offshore. John White and a small group of sailors climbed into rowboats and headed toward the island. As they got closer, White searched desperately for signs of life. He expected to see smoke rising from cooking fires. He expected to hear voices, laughter, maybe children playing. He expected someone to be waiting on the shore, waving and cheering at his return. But there was nothing, just silence. The island looked completely dead. They landed on the beach and started walking toward the settlement. John White's heart was racing. Every step felt heavier than the last. Where was everyone? Why wasn't anyone coming to greet them? The forest around them was thick and quiet. Too quiet. Finally, they reached the place where the colony should have been, and what they found was absolutely chilling. The settlement was deserted, completely empty. Houses were still standing, but they were falling apart. Weeds had grown through the floors, vines covered the walls. It looked like no one had lived there in a very long time. John White walked through the ghost town, calling out names. Eleanor? Virginia? Anyone? His voice echoed through the trees. No response. It's just more silence. But here's where it gets even stranger. The colonists didn't leave in a panic. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No broken weapons. No bodies. If there had been an attack, there would be evidence. But everything looked ... organized. It was like the colonists packed up and left on purpose. But why? Where did they go? John White kept searching. He walked through every building looking for clues. He found some personal belongings scattered around. A few tools, some damaged books. But most things were gone. The colonists had taken their supplies with them. It was actually a good sign. It meant they weren't kidnapped or killed suddenly. They had time to plan. They had time to prepare. But prepare for what? As the sun started setting, John White felt a crushing weight on his chest. His daughter was gone. His granddaughter was gone. Everyone was gone. But then, just as hope was fading, he noticed something. Something carved into a wooden post. Something that would become one of the most famous clues in American history. John White walked closer to the wooden post at the entrance of the fort. His hands were shaking. His eyes were scanning every inch of the abandoned settlement, looking for answers. And then he saw it. 3 letters carved deep into the wood. No, wait, it's not 3 letters. 7 letters. Croatoan. Croatoan. What did that mean? Was it a message? A warning? A clue? John White stared at the word. His mind was racing. Croatoan wasn't just a random word. It was the name of a nearby island. Today, We call it Hatteras Island. Back then, it was home to a friendly Native American tribe, also called the Croatoan. John White knew these people. He had met them before during earlier expeditions. They were kind and helpful. They had traded with the English settlers. Could the colonists have gone there? Did they move to Croatoan Island for safety? But wait, there was more. John White kept searching the area, and he found another carving. This time, on a tree near the entrance. The letters CRO were carved into the bark. It looked like someone started writing Croatoan but didn't finish. Why were they in a hurry? Did something interrupt them? Or was this a completely different message? Here's what made John White feel a little bit of hope. Before he left Roanoke 3 years earlier, he had made a plan with the colonists. Told them, if you have to leave this place for any reason, carve a message. Tell me where you're going. And if you're in danger, carve a cross above the message. That was the deal. Cross meant trouble. No cross meant they left safely. John White examined both carvings carefully. There was no cross. Not above Croatoan, not above Crow. That was a good sign. It meant the colonists weren't being attacked when they left. They weren't in immediate danger. They had time to pack, plan, and carve these messages. Maybe they ran out of food and decided to join the Croatoan tribe. Maybe they needed help and knew the Croatoan people would take care of them. It actually made sense. John White felt a tiny bit of relief. His family might still be alive. They might be safe on Croatoan Island, just 50 miles south. All he had to do was sail there and find them. Simple, right? He ran back to the beach where his crew was waiting. He explained everything. He showed them the carvings. He begged the captain to sail to Croatoan Island immediately. They were so close to solving the mystery, so close to finding the lost colonists. But then, something terrible happened. Something that would change everything. John White was ready. He had found the clue. He knew where his family probably went. Croatoan Island was only 50 miles away. That's not far at all. He could be there in less than a day if the weather was good. He rushed back to the ship and told the captain everything. We have to go to Croatoan Island right now. That's where they are, I know it. The captain looked at the sky. Dark clouds were rolling in. The wind was picking up. A storm was coming. But John White didn't care about the weather. He had waited 3 years for this moment. 3 years of pain and worry. His daughter was out there somewhere. His granddaughter, who he'd only seen as a newborn baby, was now 3 years old. He had missed so much of her life already. He couldn't wait any longer. He begged the captain, please, just take me to Croatoan. It's so close. We can make it before the storm hits. The captain shook his head. He was experienced. He knew the ocean. And he knew that sailing into a storm near these dangerous shallow waters was suicide. The area around the Outer Banks of North Carolina was known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. Hundreds of ships had crashed and sunk there. The underwater sandbars were invisible and deadly. One wrong move and the ship would be destroyed. The captain said, I'm sorry, John. We can't risk it. We need to wait for better weather. John White argued. He pleaded. He probably even cried. But the captain wouldn't budge. And then the storm hit. It wasn't just a regular storm. It was a monster. Massive waves crashed against the ship. The wind howled like a wild animal. Rain poured down so hard you couldn't see 2 feet in front of you. The ship rocked violently back and forth. Sailors were holding on for dear life. Everyone thought they were going to die. The storm damaged the ship badly. The sails were torn. The anchor was lost. Water was leaking into the lower decks. The crew worked frantically to keep the ship from sinking. After hours of fighting the storm, they finally got control. But the ship was a mess. It needed serious repairs. The captain made a decision. We're going back to England. We can't stay here. We'll come back another time. John White was devastated. He screamed, he argued, he refused to leave, but he had no power. He wasn't the captain. He was just a passenger. The crew voted, and they all agreed. was too dangerous to stay. The ship turned around and headed back across the Atlantic Ocean. John White stood on the deck, staring at the coast as it disappeared into the distance. Somewhere out there, his family was waiting for him. He was leaving them behind again. John White arrived back in England broken and defeated. He had been so close, just 50 miles away from possibly finding his family, 50 miles from solving the mystery, 50 miles from holding his daughter and meeting his 3-year-old granddaughter. But the storm and the damaged ship had ruined everything. He immediately started planning another trip back to Roanoke. He would find a new ship, get new supplies. This time nothing would stop him. At least that's what he thought. But life had other plans. John White tried everything to get back to Roanoke Island. He wrote letters to important people asking for help, asked wealthy merchants to fund an expedition. He even offered to pay with his own money. But nobody was interested. Why? Because England was dealing with its own problems. The country was still recovering from the war with Spain. Money was tight, ships were expensive. And honestly, most people had forgotten about the little colony in the New World. Years passed. John White kept trying. He never gave up hope. Every day he thought about his family. Were they still alive? Did they find safety with the Croatoan tribe? Did his granddaughter Virginia even remember him? Probably not. She was only a baby when he left. These thoughts haunted him constantly, aged rapidly. The guilt and the pain wore him down. He blamed himself for everything. If only he had come back sooner. If only he had fought harder to stay. If only that storm hadn't hit. By the late 1590s, John White was an old man. He was tired, sick, and completely hopeless. He finally accepted the painful truth. He would never see his family again. He would never know what happened to them. He would die without answers. In 1593, he wrote his last known letter. In it, he said he was leaving everything to God, who knows what is best. It was his way of giving up. He couldn't fight anymore. John White died sometime around 1593. The exact date is unknown. He died alone, heartbroken, and filled with regret. He never got closure. He never found out what happened to the 117 colonists he left behind. His story is one of the saddest parts of the Roanoke mystery. A man who did everything he could, but was stopped by forces beyond his control. War, storms, bad luck. Sometimes life is just cruel like that. But here's the thing. John White's story doesn't end the mystery. It only deepens it. Because now, nobody knew what happened to those colonists. Nobody went looking for them. They were just ... forgotten. Left behind in history as ghosts. The lost colony of Roanoke became a legend. And for over 400 years, people have been trying to figure out what really happened to them. Let's talk about the people who vanished. These weren't just nameless faces in history. They were real people with real lives, dreams, and fears. There were 117 colonists total. It's a pretty small group when you think about it. About the size of a typical middle school grade. Men, women, children, and even babies. They all disappeared without a trace. But who were they exactly? What kind of people agreed to sail across the ocean to an unknown land? Most of them were families. Regular English folks looking for a fresh start. Some were farmers. Some were craftsmen, like carpenters, blacksmiths, and bricklayers. There were a few soldiers for protection, a couple of assistants to help Governor John White run things. These weren't rich people. Wealthy folks stayed comfortable in England. These were working-class families who wanted land, opportunity, and freedom. America has always been the land of second chances, and these colonists were some of the first people to chase that dream. Among them was Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter. She was brave, young, and pregnant when she made the voyage. Imagine being pregnant and sailing across a dangerous ocean to a wild, unexplored land. That takes serious courage. She gave birth to Virginia Dare on August 18, 1587, just days after arriving. Virginia became famous for being the first English child born in America, but she was just a baby when everyone disappeared. She would have been about 3 years old when John White came back. What happened to her is one of the saddest parts of this mystery. There were also about 17 women in the group. Back in the 1500s, women didn't have many rights. They couldn't vote, own property easily, or make major decisions. But these women were tough. They left everything behind to help build a new colony. They cooked, took care of children, made clothes, and helped with farming. Without them, the colony would have failed immediately. They were just as important as the men, even though history doesn't talk about them as much. Then, there were the children. At least 11 kids were part of the colony. Can you imagine being a child back then? No phones, no video games, no internet? Just hard work, strange new foods, and scary forests filled with wild animals. These kids had to grow up fast. They helped with chores, learned survival skills, and probably played along the beaches and woods of Roanoke. They had no idea they were about to become part of one of history's greatest mysteries. These 117 people had hopes and dreams. They wanted better lives. They wanted to build something special. But instead, they vanished into thin air. Every single one of them. No bodies, no graves, no evidence of what happened. Just gone. And that's what makes this mystery so haunting. These were real people. Somebody's mom, somebody's kid, somebody's friend. And we still don't know what happened to them. Now let's talk about something really important. The Native Americans. When the English colonists arrived at Roanoke Island, they weren't landing on empty land. Native American tribes had been living there for thousands of years. This was their home, their hunting grounds, their sacred places. And suddenly, strange people with pale skin, weird clothes, and big wooden ships showed up claiming the land belonged to England. How do you think that went? The answer is complicated. Some Native American tribes were friendly. Others were definitely not. The main tribes in the area were the Croatoan, the Aquascogue, the Croatoan, the powerful Powhatan Confederacy further north. Each tribe had its own language, culture, and opinions about these English invaders. The colonists needed help from the Native Americans to survive. They didn't know how to grow food in this new environment. They didn't know which plants were safe to eat. They didn't know how to hunt the local animals. Without Native American knowledge, they would starve. The Croatoan tribe was the most friendly. Their chief Montejo actually traveled to England with earlier English explorers. He learned English, wore English clothes, and even converted to Christianity. He was baptized and became the first Native American to join the Christian church. Montejo helped the colonists, taught them survival skills. He acted as a translator between the English and other tribes. He was a bridge between two very different worlds. This is why many people believe the colonists went to live with the Croatoan tribe when things got tough. But not all tribes were welcoming. Some had very good reasons to hate the English. In 1585, 2 years before the main colony arrived, there was an earlier group of English explorers at Roanoke. They were led by a man named Ralph Lane. These guys were soldiers, not families, and they were brutal. When a Native American tribe called the Aquascogue was accused of stealing a silver cup, Ralph Lane's men burned down their entire village. They destroyed homes, food supplies, and killed people over a cup. A cup, how would you feel if someone burned down your house over something so small? This violence created serious tension. Other tribes heard about what happened. They didn't trust the English anymore. Can you blame them? English had guns, swords, and armor. They had diseases that Native Americans had never encountered before. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza killed thousands of native people who had no immunity. Even when the English weren't trying to harm them, they were dangerous just by being there. So when the 1587 colonists arrived, they walked into a very tense situation. Some tribes wanted to help them. Some wanted them gone. Some wanted revenge for past violence. This complicated relationship with Native Americans plays a huge role in theories about what happened to the lost colony. All right, let's dive into the theories. What actually happened to those 117 colonists? Nobody knows for sure, but historians have spent centuries coming up with possible explanations. The first and most popular theory is this. The colonists moved to Croatoan Island and joined the Native American tribe living there. And honestly, this theory makes a lot of sense. Remember that word carved into the post? Croatoan? It wasn't random. It was a clear message. The colonists were telling John White exactly where they went. Croatoan Island, which we now call Hatteras Island, was only about 50 miles south of Roanoke. It wasn't some impossible journey. They could have walked along the beach or traveled by boat. The Croatoan tribe was friendly. Their chief, Manteo, was literally one of the colonists. He was baptized as a Christian and was officially part of their group. Why wouldn't they go to his people for help? Think about the situation the colonists were in. Food was running out. They had no supplies from England. Winter was coming. They were surrounded by tribes that didn't trust them. They were scared, hungry, and desperate. The smart move would be to join forces with a friendly tribe that knew how to survive in this land. The Croatoan people knew how to fish, hunt, grow crops, and find fresh water. They could teach the English how to live off the land. It was the colonists' best chance at survival. There's actually evidence supporting this theory. In the early 1600s, English explorers talked to Native Americans in the region. Several tribes told stories about white people living among coastal tribes. Some Native Americans had gray or blue eyes, which was extremely rare. Some had lighter skin than typical Native Americans. Some even spoke broken English. Were these the descendants of the Roanoke colonists? It's very possible. If the English colonists married into the Croatoan tribe and had children, those kids would be mixed race. Over time, the English colonists would blend into the tribe completely. In 1709, over 100 years after the colony disappeared, an English explorer named John Lawson visited the area. He met a tribe called the Hatteras Indians living on, you guessed it, Hatteras Island, the old name for Croatoan Island. Lawson wrote that some of these people had gray eyes and claimed their ancestors could talk in a book. That means read. Native Americans didn't have written language back then, but the English colonists did. This is huge evidence that the Roanoke colonists survived by joining the Croatoan tribe. So why didn't John White find them? Because that stupid storm stopped him from sailing to Croatoan Island. He was literally 50 miles away from solving the mystery, and bad weather ruined everything. If he had just made it there, we might have answers. Instead, the colonists lived out their lives with the Croatoan people, and history forgot about them. Now let's talk about a much darker theory. What if the colonists didn't peacefully join a friendly tribe? What if they were attacked and killed by hostile Native Americans? This theory is scary, but we have to consider it. Remember, not all tribes were friendly. Some had serious reasons to hate the English. And the colonists were vulnerable, outnumbered, and basically defenseless without supplies from England. The most likely attackers would have been the Croatoan tribe, or tribes connected to the Powhatan Confederacy. These groups had bad experiences with earlier English explorers. They remembered the violence. They remembered the burned villages. They remembered how the English treated them like they were less than human. Revenge is a powerful motivator. If these tribes wanted to wipe out the English colony, they easily could have. The colonists had maybe a dozen guns at most, and Native Americans had hundreds of warriors who knew the land perfectly. But here's the problem with this theory. There's no evidence of violence. When John White searched the settlement, he didn't find bodies. He didn't find blood. He didn't find broken weapons or signs of a battle. The fort wasn't burned down. If there had been a massacre, there would be remains, bones, graves. Something archaeologists have searched Roanoke Island for centuries using metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, and careful excavation. They've never found mass graves or evidence of a slaughter. However, some historians argue the attack might not have happened at the settlement. Maybe the colonists left Roanoke Island peacefully, carved the Croatoan message, and started traveling. Then, while they were on the move, they were ambushed. Maybe they were attacked while crossing through hostile territory. Maybe they were killed on the beach or in the forest. If that happened, their bodies would be scattered and much harder to find. Animals would have scattered the bones. Time and weather would have erased most evidence. There's also another possibility. What if only some of the colonists were killed? Maybe the group split up. Some went to Croatoan Island. Some tried to travel north toward the Chesapeake Bay, where they originally wanted to settle. The group traveling north could have been attacked and killed, while the group going south survived. This would explain why some Native American tribes later reported seeing white people. But not all 117 colonists. In 1607, 20 years after Roanoke was abandoned, English colonists started a new settlement called Jamestown in Virginia. They heard rumors from the Powhatan tribe. Chief Powhatan reportedly said he had killed English people who lived near his territory. Was he talking about the Roanoke colonists? We don't know. The story was told secondhand and might have been exaggerated or misunderstood. But it's chilling to think about. The murder theory can't be completely ruled out. Here's another theory that's less dramatic, but maybe more realistic. What if the colonists simply starved to death or died from disease? No attacks, no mystery disappearances. Just the harsh reality of survival in a brand new world. This theory isn't as exciting as others, but it might be the closest to the truth. Let's break it down. The colonists arrived in July 1587. That sounds like good timing, right? Summer means warm weather and time to plant crops. And here's the problem. They arrived too late in the growing season. Corn, beans, and other crops take months to grow. By the time their plants were ready to harvest, winter would be coming. And winters in North Carolina can be brutal, especially back in the 1500s. Without a good food supply, the colonists were in serious trouble from day one. They brought some food with them from England. Things like dried meat, grain, and hardtack, which is basically a rock-hard biscuit that lasts forever but tastes terrible. But those supplies wouldn't last long for 117 people. They needed to hunt, fish, and gather food from the land. The problem? Most of them didn't know how. They were English farmers and craftsmen, didn't know how to fish in salt water. They didn't know which berries were safe to eat. They didn't know how to trap animals in American forests. Without help from Native Americans, they were basically helpless. Starvation is a slow, painful death. First, you feel constantly hungry. Then your body starts eating its own fat and muscle for energy. You get weak. You can't think clearly. You get sick easily because your immune system shuts down. Children and elderly people die first, then the weak and sick. Eventually, everyone dies. It's horrible to think about, but it happens. It might have happened to the Roanoke colonists. Disease is another huge factor. The colonists were drinking water from streams and rivers. Bad water causes diseases like dysentery, which gives you severe diarrhea and dehydration. It kills you quickly. They also could have gotten typhoid fever, malaria from mosquitoes, or parasites from uncooked food. They had no doctors, no medicine. No antibiotics because those wouldn't be invented for another 350 years. If someone got seriously sick, they just died. Simple as that. Now, you might be thinking, but wait, if they all died, where are the bodies? Good question. Bodies decompose fast, especially in hot, humid climates like North Carolina. Within a few months, wild animals would scatter the bones. Bugs and bacteria would break everything down. Rain and wind would bury the remains under dirt and leaves. After 3 years, there might be nothing left to find. It's completely possible that 117 people died and left almost no trace behind. Let's talk about another terrifying possibility. What if the Spanish killed the Roanoke colonists? This theory sounds wild, but it's actually more believable than you think. Spain and England were enemies during this time. They hated each other, were fighting for control of the New World, and both countries wanted to dominate the Atlantic Ocean. Spain was incredibly powerful. They had already claimed most of Central and South America, Florida, and the Caribbean. They had gold, silver, and massive armies. England was the underdog trying to challenge them. Spain did not want England building colonies in North America, not even a little bit. They saw Roanoke as a threat. Even though it was just a tiny settlement with barely over 100 people, it represented something bigger. If England succeeded at Roanoke, they would build more colonies. More colonies meant more competition for resources, land, and power. Spain wanted to crush this problem before it grew. They had the military strength to do it. Spanish ships regularly patrolled the Atlantic coast. They were looking for English settlements to destroy. In fact, we know for sure that Spain knew about Roanoke. Spanish spies in England reported back to King Philip II about England's plans. The Spanish government discussed sending ships to wipe out the colony. They had the motive, the means, and the opportunity. So did they actually do it? Maybe. Here's what makes this theory scary. A Spanish attack would explain why there were no bodies at the settlement. If Spanish soldiers raided Roanoke, they wouldn't leave evidence behind. They would kill or capture the colonists, burn everything, and sail away. They might have taken prisoners back to Spanish territories to use as slaves or servants. Or worse, they might have killed everyone and dumped the bodies in the ocean. The Spanish were brutal back then. They massacred entire Native American villages. Killing a small English colony would have been nothing to them. But here's the problem. There's no Spanish record of attacking Roanoke. Spain kept detailed records of their military operations. They documented everything: ships, supplies, battles, victories. If they had destroyed an English colony, they would have bragged about it. They would have written it down and celebrated. But there's nothing. No documents, no reports, no mentions of Roanoke in Spanish archives. That's strange. Why would they keep it secret? Some historians think maybe the attack was unofficial. Maybe a rogue Spanish captain decided to attack on his own without orders from Spain. Or maybe the records were lost or destroyed over the centuries. Or maybe Spain did attack, but the colonists escaped before the Spanish arrived. Perhaps someone warned them? They grabbed what they could, carved Croatoan as a message, and fled to safety. We may never know the truth. For over 400 years, the Roanoke mystery remained unsolved. Historians argued about theories, writers created legends and stories, and people even claimed the colonists were abducted by aliens or swallowed by the ocean. But in the last few decades, archaeologists have started finding real evidence. And it's changing everything we thought we knew about the lost colony. In 2012, researchers made an incredible discovery. They were examining a map drawn by John White himself. It was an old, fragile piece of paper showing the Virginia and North Carolina coastline. When scientists used special imaging technology to look closer at the map, they found something hidden. There was a tiny symbol covered by a patch of paper. When they carefully lifted the patch, they saw a small fort symbol drawn in invisible ink about 50 miles inland from Roanoke. Was this a secret backup plan? Did John White mark a hidden location where the colonists planned to go if things went wrong? Archaeologists immediately traveled to that location. It's near the Chowan River in North Carolina, and guess what they found? English artifacts, pieces of pottery, metal objects, gun parts, tools, things that English colonists would have used in the late 1500s. This wasn't a Native American site. These were European items. Could this be where some of the colonists went? It's very possible. Maybe they didn't all go to Croatoan Island. Maybe the group split up, and some traveled inland to this secret location. But that's not all. In 2015, archaeologists working on Hatteras Island, the old Croatoan island, found even more evidence. They discovered a 16th century English rapier sword. A rapier is a thin, fancy sword that English gentlemen carried. Why would a Native American tribe have an English sword unless they got it from the colonists? They also found English-style copper and iron pieces mixed with Native American artifacts. This strongly suggests that English colonists lived with the Croatoan tribe and traded with them. Scientists have also used DNA testing. We've tested descendants of the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina. The Lumbee people have interesting features. Some have European last names like Dare, Cooper, and Bailey. Those were names of Roanoke colonists. Some have lighter skin, blue or green eyes, and different hair textures than typical Native Americans. DNA tests show that many Lumbee people have European ancestry dating back to the late 1500s. That's exactly when the Roanoke colonists disappeared. Coincidence? Probably not. Researchers have also used ground-penetrating radar on Roanoke Island and surrounding areas. They've found buried structures and possible grave sites. Excavations are ongoing. Every year, new discoveries are made. Piece by piece, the puzzle is coming together. The lost colony isn't completely lost anymore. We're getting closer to the truth than ever before. Science and technology are finally giving us answers that historians could only guess at for centuries. So after all these theories, all this evidence, and over 400 years of mystery, what really happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Here's the truth. They probably didn't all die in one tragic event. They most likely split into smaller groups and scattered in different directions. Some went to Croatoan Island. Some traveled inland, and some might have died along the way. This is called the dispersal theory, and it's what most experts believe today. Think about it logically. Colonists were stuck on Roanoke Island with no supplies. Winter was coming. Food was running out. Couldn't all stay together because there wasn't enough food to support 117 people. The smart decision would be to split up and seek help from different friendly tribes. Some families probably went south to join Manteo's Croatoan tribe on Hatteras Island. Others might have traveled 50 miles west to the inland site marked on John White's secret map. And maybe a small group tried going north toward the Chesapeake Bay. The archaeological evidence supports this. English artifacts have been found in multiple locations, not just one place. We found items on Hatteras Island, inland near the Chowan River, and scattered across eastern North Carolina. The DNA evidence also shows that European genes mixed into several different Native American tribes in the region. This means the colonists didn't stay together. They integrated into various tribes and started new lives. Over time, these English colonists would have adopted Native American ways of living. They learned the language, they wore Native American clothing. They hunted and fished like the tribes. Their children would be half English, half Native American. After a generation or two, the English culture would fade. The colonists would essentially become Native Americans, and that's probably what happened. The lost colony didn't vanish into thin air. They simply became part of the Native American communities around them. But some colonists might not have survived. Disease, starvation, or hostile tribes could have killed people along the way. Not everyone made it. Life was brutal back then. One bad winter, one infected wound, one attack. Any of these could end your life.
Oh.
So when we ask what happened to the lost colony, the answer isn't simple. Different things happened to different people. The mystery of Roanoke isn't about aliens or ghosts or curses. It's about survival. It's about desperate people making impossible choices in a dangerous world. They did what they had to do to stay alive. Some succeeded, some didn't. Because they scattered and blended into Native American tribes, they disappeared from English history. But they didn't disappear from existence. Their descendants are still here today, living in North Carolina, carrying the DNA and the legacy of America's first English colonists.